right. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. So we are going to get started. Morgan is not able to make it tonight. So Michael, if you would like to lead us in the prayer and pledge, that would be great.
Yeah, definitely. If everybody just wants to center themselves in a way they see fit. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate it. Annie, has Dr. Burnley joined the Zoom?
Not yet. Let me send him an email really quickly.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so Dr. Burnley is coming to speak with us tonight. He'll give a short presentation, and then, like all of our other speakers, we'll have time to ask questions and everything like that. Also, I think that we have some guests tonight, so you all are more than welcome to also ask questions of Dr. Burnley and participate in that when he does join the Zoom. Okay, Annie, do you know if he has joined?
Still not yet.
Okay, that's fine. We can just do the same thing that we did the other evening, where we went ahead and went to public announcements and then checked back in to see if Dr. Burnley is here. And then if he still isn't, we can go ahead with public comments and concerns and periodically check if he's back. And then we'll just put that on pause and listen to Dr. Burnley when he does join. So that being said, does anybody have any public announcements at this time?
Sure, I'll go real quick. A couple weeks ago, after the passing of Michael, and I reached out to Natalie and Annie and Chris and Amy Lopez Matthews as well to see if I could draft an email that would go out to the student body, just really kind of reiterating, the importance of all the students that we've lost, especially in the last 4 years. So I've worked with them and drafted this letter. It's been looked over by them and Vice President Fisher and Dean Schramm, but I'm going to go ahead and put that in the Google Drive as well, if anybody wants to look over that before it's sent out in the next day or so. If you have any comments, questions, feel free to highlight something and comment it. But it's really just a stance in solidarity with those who we've lost in the past couple of years here at UD, and just really supporting the students and them going, really just supporting them. So if anybody has any questions, you can reach out to me, and I'm going to throw that in the Google Drive as well.
Great. Thanks, Drew. It does look like Dr. Burnley has joined, so we are going to put the public announcements on hold, and then we'll revisit those after. But hi, Dr. Burnley. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here tonight. I really appreciate it. So if everyone could just give their attention to Dr. Burnley at that time, that would be great.
Hello, Natalie. How are you? And how's everyone? Good, good. I'm just recovering from a very bad Cleveland Browns loss, so forgive me for being late. No, I'm kidding. I have had a challenge here at home that I need to address, but thank you for having me. Thank you for having this time to really engage you. And, I really want to just spend a few moments to kind of give you just a real high level overview of some of the things that we're doing as a university, particularly as it relates to the advancement of a strategic plan aimed at really advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion. Talk a little bit about how, from my perspective, this work is grounded in our Catholic Americanist identity and mission. Talk a little bit about some of the ways in which we've developed an infrastructure around this work, and how this work has informed what has been framed as an anti-racist commitment for the university to really make a commitment to be an anti-racist institution. I don't want to talk too long. I'm really interested more in conversation to address some of your questions. Like you, we are all dealing with a very, very complex set of challenges, quite frankly, not the least of which is tied to the COVID pandemic, the social political climate that we find ourselves in, tied to either a presidential election, tied to the issues of race relations in our nation, and other challenges. So I'm hoping this will be a time for some conversation, to have some candid and transparent sharing here today. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share screen here. Can everyone see this? Okay. I am going to load this. I'm going to walk through this and then we'll open it up, Natalie. Does that sound okay? All right. So back in 2016, President Spina, as you all know, began his tenure here at the university. One of the things that Eric did was to create, right out the gate, the position that I now hold, the Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion. It's an inaugural position, one that is really, I'm gonna turn on my clock here because I wanna make sure I'm timing myself. I can be very long-winded, and I wanna protect myself from doing that. Okay. So he created that position because he felt that this comment here, this quote from Eric, really says it all. The University of Dayton affirms that diversity, equity, and inclusion are inextricably linked with excellence. We believe that for us to be excellent, for us to be a university for the common good, a university that really reflects at the very highest level of what it means to be a Catholic Americanist institution, an institution that affirms throughout the life of institutional life of the dignity of every human being, and that we all are made in the image of God. So Eric we had an executive director for diversity and inclusion before we arrived, but that position and the work was risen to a cabinet level position, which reflects really the strategic priority that he and other leaders across the university placed on this work. And so this work, my office that I lead, the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and the work we're doing that I'll talk more about in a few minutes, is really built upon a very strong foundation. I'm always careful to make the point that with Eric coming on board, with myself and others coming on board, giving leadership to the work in the ways in which it's being expressed today, it's not new. That we are built, this work is built on a very, very strong foundation, laid by those members, students, faculty, staff, and administrators who were here long before us, who are addressing the various challenges that found expression in disparities, inequities, challenges that were disproportionately impacting persons that are with certain identities, race, gender, sexual orientation, disabilities, socioeconomic class, socioeconomic location. These are issues that are not unique to UD. We are a microcosm of the world, of our broader society. But the work that you see here, and I'm not going to go through each of these efforts. These are just samples of the kinds of work and the kinds of initiatives that led to the emergence and the formation of my position in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Our office really began, we really established a mission statement, really for the first time this year. We had a vision statement, but I wanted to share this mission statement, and to underscore, I'm not going to read it. You all are very bright students. You can read. But what I do want to underscore is the work we do is really in collaboration with units, offices, programs, leaders at every level of the institution across the university. Ours is really to coordinate and create synergy for efforts that are both measurable, sustainable, and designed to have impact. Ultimately, the impact that we're wanting to have is really twofold. Yes, there are groups and persons and communities, populations that are disproportionately represented among some of the inequities and disparities that we see in terms of success as across different measures. So we want to close those gaps. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're providing you as students the very best education that we possibly can as we prepare you and as you prepare for engaging in life, not only while you're here, but especially that you're prepared to engage the world, an increasingly diverse world, an increasingly diverse marketplace, that you will have the kinds of competencies, the abilities and the skill sets that would allow you to lead, learn, and serve across multiple dimensions of human difference. The question becomes, how did your UD experience, your flyer experience, prepare you for what you're about to enter? And that's at the end of the day, our mission. So when Dr. Spina came on board, one of the things, well, when I came on board, I spent my first year doing a lot of listening. I held over 27 focus groups across the life of the university, and basically asked the question, when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, I wanted to know how people felt, where people felt we were strong, where did people feel that we had challenges or weaknesses, if you will, and where did they see opportunities. Out of that work, I made set of recommendations after my first year. I pretty much said, okay, here's what I hear, here's what I've heard you say, and I laid out a 3-year plan that really spoke to doing a couple of things. One was to bring on board an outside consultant to help us examine and assess diversity efforts over the past 5 years. We needed to develop data and evidence before we made investments and decisions in terms of how we would move forward. Where were we strong? What did we do well? Where did we invest and why did we invest there? What was the impact we had? The president, after that first year, called together what was called the President's Diversity and Inclusion Assessment Task Force that I led. And again, it was this group that oversaw this 2-year process of assessing. So we did a flyers promise, we did something we called an aim for community excellence, which is really a climate survey. And we did something called a diversity mapping process. It was very comprehensive. Each initiative was really committed to inclusion. So we wanted people across the university to participate or have the opportunity to participate. And this data that we gleaned from this and the various conversations we had informed the emergence of a strategic plan that I'll talk a little bit about very shortly. The work also involved in those first 2 years, a working group that I co-led with the Associate Provost for Faculty Development, Dr. Carol Phelps. It was a group called as you see there, the Hiring and Advancement for Diversity and Inclusion Mission Work Group. When I came on board, the Flyers, what's known now as the Flyers Promise Scholarship, was an initiative that was underway in terms of planning. I celebrated that. There was significant investment in that. This was, as you know, an opportunity to create greater access and affordability to those students from various populations that were underrepresented and underserved here at the university. Part of that process, and it's important for you to know this, and I try to really encourage students to understand that the work that we're doing around diversity, equity, inclusion is really, we know that the more you are involved in classrooms, workspaces, and even have people in front of the classroom, faculty that are diverse backgrounds. When I say diverse backgrounds, I'm not just talking about color. I'm talking about diversity understood in very complex ways. Of course, race is part of that. Of course, gender. You benefit from that when we leverage that correctly. You learn. The research is very clear that your ability to work, to innovate, to work effectively, to develop working groups that are better positioned to achieve high impact, diverse spaces are really optimal when leveraged appropriately. When we develop ways of supervising, delivering curricula that's culturally informed and responsive. So what I said in terms of the Flyer Promise investment and scholarship initiative, I celebrated that, but I asked the question, where is the correlating investment and strategy to achieve greater racial, ethnic diversity and gender equity across the workforce, faculty, staff, and administration? And it didn't exist. So we developed this initiative and submitted an 84-page plan to a report to President Spina. He took out of that and identified 10 priorities that are now underway and being implemented that's really aimed at creating greater racial ethnic diversity across the workforce at UD. And that shows up in some of the goals and objectives in the strategic plan, as well as the anti-racist action plan. Status of women at the University of Dayton, report card that has led to a new structure here. I want to talk about that, but it really addresses the issue of the climate for gender for women across the life of the university. We needed this data. We needed to assess where we are so that the decisions that we're making, the strategies that we're developing, and the metrics that we've developed that really drive the strategic plan are evidence-based. That's not what people say, but we needed evidence to make these kinds of decisions. The Flyers plan for community excellence. I'm not going to go through each of these. I'm not going to go through these individually. I do encourage you as leaders here on this campus, if you haven't already, to take time to go to the Office of Diversity website to take a look at this plan, because this really, this plan it's informing and will impact your education in a variety of ways. But we're looking at developing capacity for our faculty, staff, and administrators to be able to really work effectively and teach effectively and lead effectively in diverse spaces, to achieve the kinds of demographic composition that reflects the broader society, something that we currently do not have, to create a more robust curricular and co-curricular architecture. Again, wanting to make sure you're developing the kinds of intercultural competencies that would not only help you learn, lead, and serve in ways that we think are important, but you need to know that Fortune 500 companies are clear. Their recruitment and the strategies are giving increasingly significant attention to looking for talent across multiple industries that have demonstrated intercultural competencies. They're actually making decisions to either increase or cut back on their recruitment efforts at universities that are not based on the extent to which their universities are graduating students that are interculturally competent. I can tell you stories that would underline that, but time does not really allow for that. So you'll see that, but if you haven't, please take time to look at that. In that strategic plan, you will also see a group of definitions, because we're using this language around implicit bias, diversity, equity, and inclusion. What does that mean? Part of the work we did over a 2-year period was to develop a lexicon, if you will, that really has resulted in a glossary or set of definitions that basically says at the University of Dayton, when we use this language, this is what we mean. So when we talk about underrepresented students or underserved students, there's meaning behind that. There's definitions behind that. And I would really, really encourage you to familiarize yourselves with that. So after the murder of George Floyd and a number of other developments that really has intensified the racial climate in this country, we became not aware of what has taken place in this country over the past several months has made some people, some leaders, institutions more aware of the reality of systemic racism and other systemic forms of oppression in our nation. President Espina, along with all the members across the President's Council, issued an open letter and which announced a commitment that we're making to be an anti-racist institution. In that plan is our rather 11 action steps. I'm not going to read through this here. Again, if you haven't read the open letter, just put open letter in the search engine of FUD's website, and you'll find the letter along with more detailed information about each of these. And I'm not going through these 11 steps. I just wanted to put it up here for effect. The point I want to make is that the anti-racist action steps really, and the action plan rather, is not something separate from or in addition to the strategic plan, which we're calling the Flyers Plan for Community Excellence. It really is an outgrowth of that. This is being driven by the strategic plan, but it really looks at the strategic plan through the lens of race and a commitment to understanding, disrupting, and dismantling systemic racism, which is not unique to UD. It is pervasive, and we need to address that. And if we fail to do that, then we are failing to deliver our promise to be a university, to becoming a university for the common good. Each of these steps here have direct correlation to goals and objectives in the strategic plan. And so that's the point I wanted to make. Just a couple of more screens that I'm going to kind of shut it down and open it up for some Q&A, because I'm really interested in hearing what some of your concerns are, some of your questions, or even suggestions as we move forward. We have developed an infrastructure, and we're continuing to build infrastructure to drive this work across the life of the university. This year, or actually in the spring, we launched the University Inclusive Excellence Council, which is a representative body. I co-chair that with Dr. Leslie Pica. This is a group that is charged with providing, really advising the president on all matters related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also playing a significant role in overseeing the advancement and implementation of the strategic plan. The President's Commission on the Status of Women is an outgrowth of the Status of Women at the University of Dayton report card. And again, it plays a seminal role as it relates to climate and achieving gender equity. And then the Institutional Bias Response Advisory Committee, which is a new organization, or new organizational entity, which is a group of faculty, staff, and administrators that really it advises the president on how to respond on reports of bias and harassment at the University of Dayton. It really advises not only Eric Spina, but other leaders as it relates to those reported incidents. Finally, we're building capacity across the life of the university in a variety of ways. It's one thing to achieve greater racial ethnic diversity and to attempt to address issues that are impacting individuals and communities based on their identity or how these identities intersect on campus. How do we do that? And how do we live into that? Well, we have to become more equity-minded as leaders, faculty, staff, and students. So we've done a number of things. We have the Inclusive Excellence Academy, which is led by Tiffany Taylor-Smith out of my office, which is a professional development platform for faculty, staff, and administrators to address any number of issues in terms of their professional development to develop intercultural competencies that would inform their work. We have the strategic plan that we have in place now is a university-wide plan, but there are units across the life of the university that are in the process of developing diversity strategic plans that are contextually relevant for their area, and they will be aligned with the university-wide plan, and those are being developed this year. You may have heard of the Dialogue Zone, which was launched last year. It's in its second year. This is a space where faculty, staff, or students can enter into spaces to really lean into very intentionally to some very difficult issues, but developing the capacity not to argue or debate, but to listen and to dialogue. Not to convince anyone of any particular perspective, but positioning ourselves to understand and engage in civil discourse, which is a problem, it seems, more and more these days in the broader society. We're doing work in the greater West Dayton with leadership across the African-American community. I won't say more than that. We have launched a small business incubator in West Dayton that's been run through the business school of business administration. Courageous conversations at the senior level. The president's cabinet is in its third year of doing common reads around issues of gender, sexual orientation, class, implicit bias. We're trying to positioning ourselves to listen to voices and perspectives of groups that are marginalized and minoritized within the context, and we ourselves having difficult conversations, living within those tensions and experiencing what that's like. Because if we don't do that, how can we lead this process as senior leaders? Hiring for advancement, I said a little bit about that already. And you're familiar, I'm sure, with the U Diversity module. Again, being transparent and creating an experience and a way of conveying and communicating to incoming students that we're serious about these issues. Among all the things that you will be learning here, we are very purposeful and intentional, because many of us come from very homogeneous backgrounds, right? So for many, it's the first time to really engage difference as expressed in a variety of ways. I'm not just talking about race here. So the module is really a way of really conveying, sending the message that these are important, but beginning to just introduce some of these terms. And finally, the last screen. I did pretty good. I think we're at, well, maybe a little too long. But my last screen is this statement. Our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion is not an option. It really is a mission-driven imperative. And in some settings, I would say it's also a business imperative. How are we positioning ourselves to prepare you, but also as an institution to respond to the demographic shifts that we see in our country? So I want to end with that, and thank you again for the opportunity to have this time to be here.
Thank you, Dr. Burnley. I really do appreciate you being here. Did anybody have any questions for Dr. Burnley? Anyone within SGA or who's a guest at the Senate meeting? Feel free to go ahead and ask those.
I have a question. So hi, Dr. Burnley. Miss you. Hope you're doing good. So I had a question. I don't know necessarily if it can go, or I'm never mind. Don't pull back the PowerPoint. So one thing I have with
bring it back up. I can.
Oh, yes. No. It's okay. It's okay. One question that I have with the 11 action plan. First of all, I think the 11 action plan is great. Like, I think those are like some really good goals, like both short-term and long-term. But my question is, how exactly is the university kind of going to gauge like its progress on those action steps? Because, you know, it sounds good, like in writing and stuff. And, you know, the concept is great, but, you know, goals like building a better connection with the African-American community, like that's so broad. So like, is there like another plan that the university is working on that goes like more into depth on like what they're going to actually tangibly do and how they're going to track that throughout the years? Like, how is that kind of working out?
Those are spot on questions, and so right now, each of those groups, President Spina called into place in September. Each group, each action step has a working group developing metrics and identifying goals and objectives that he wants on his desk before the end of the semester. We're anticipating a communication to come out to the community before you leave for Thanksgiving. That's the target that will lay out goals, objectives, who's going to be responsible for each area, and the metrics that will be used to gauge progress or the lack thereof. The progress in the implementation of these goals and objectives and these action steps will also be tied to the strategic planning process. The strategic planning process calls for annualized reporting. It'll be very transparent. And leaders Eric has been very clear that people will be held accountable in terms of what progress we're making or not. Each of the units that are developing unit-level strategic plans that will also be addressing these action plans will have not only their individual reports, but my office will do a composite report and report that out to the university. We're also working on a dashboard for the strategic plan. So you'll be able to see the progress we're making or not, right? But you're right. The open letter is a statement, and statements can be made. But now we're about doing the work, and Eric is not lost on that. None of us are. So stay tuned for communication within the next several weeks that will give greater specificity about what we plan to achieve. They're tangible, they're measurable goals and objectives, and it will be a transparent progress in terms of how we're moving forward. Thank you. That's a great question. I appreciate that.
And then following up on that, while we're talking about accountability, the idea, so one thing I think that isn't as addressed is, every year since I've been at UD, there's been some type of like hate crime that's happened, like hate speech, hate crime, or whatever. So like whether that's like the N-word getting writing in dorms or walls or outside of KU, or somebody making fun of George Floyd's like death in the student neighborhood, what's the university's standpoint on how we're going to hold that type of hatred and that type of stuff accountable? Because that kind of stuff happens every single year. And I like think personally, now as a junior, it's really disheartening, especially like being in Zoom, we're meeting freshmen and that's kind of like their first impression of like UD. And I think it's really sad because, our campus really preaches like this community aspect, but we have so many hate slurs and hate crimes and hate speech on campus. So like what kind of implementation is like the university as a whole trying to do to like prevent those stuff from happening? Because like, I don't know, from my standpoint and from like other people of color, I just feel like there's no like accountability, like there's never any justice. It's just like an email and then it's like, oh, we just wait for the next one and then there's going to be another email. But so what's kind of
behind every email or letter that comes from the president or others, there's extraordinary steps that are being taken. There's no tolerance from the administrative standpoint for that kind of any behavior that really depicts hate or offense to persons, or groups with various identities. We have an equity compliance office. I made mention of the new Institutional Bias Advisory Council, and there was another group under another name that has been investigating and acting upon reports that are made. We are restricted by law from actually revealing in any detail kind of what outcomes are and kind of there's a level of confidentiality that we have to sustain in terms of certain steps. But you need to know. And we're struggling with how do we let students know and how do we build trust to know that there are persons when reports are made, they're taken seriously, they're investigated, and persons that are found to be responsible for committing certain acts, they are held accountable. And there are consequences addressed to that, but we're limited in terms of how much we can really disclose about those processes. Never since I've been here has something been reported and a person has been or persons found to be guilty, if you will, or responsible for certain acts that are in violation of either student conduct or other policies that we have in place. They are held accountable, and quite frankly, I'm aware that there is this sense by students, particularly those students who are tied to identities that are often the objects of these acts, feeling that nothing is done, that we're not taken seriously. But nothing could be further from the truth. And I wish we had more space to talk about that. How, what can we do to kind of, convey more clearly that there is no tolerance for that. And students, faculty and staff for that matter, are held accountable as well. This is just not a student issue. This is a human issue across the life of the institution. And our president and other leaders, we take this very seriously, and persons are held accountable.
Thank you so much. And just because you said that, I'll be reaching out to you. So
thank you. I'll look for that. Okay. Don't make me come looking for you now.
All right. Love you, Dr. Burnley. Thank you.
I had another question when it comes to accountability. So, it has been stated repeatedly that we are to, Dr. Spina has said that we can hold him accountable along with his counsel. When it comes to things like that, how is the best way to hold them accountable? What steps should be taken in order to address those kinds of issues? How can we as students convey those concerns?
I think the first step is to thank you for the question. I think the first step is to make sure you're well informed of what commitments and promises we've made. What have we said, right? And as leaders, I'm assuming that you're well versed on that, and that's including the strategic plan, the action plan, but other policies and practices that, not so much practices, but policies and statements that we've made, because those are the documents, that's the language that to which you can hold us accountable. Now, being familiar with the various avenues of addressing issues through equity compliance, to reporting bias or harassment, or other ways in which faculty, staff, and administrators, through HR or through the academic departments, familiarize yourself again with policies and the avenues that are available to you. But the other thing that I will say, and this is not always popular, for an administrator to say this, but I say, I'm very clear. I'm a historian by training, and I'm clear that students have extraordinary power, right? Your power lies in your ability in very appropriate and civil ways to protest, to organize, to use your voices, and avenues of communication to address your concerns. If we're not delivering, building coalitions across your groups and identities, working in unity, to say, well, Dr. Burnley, you said on so-and-so that you were going to do this, or your office says this, but here's an outcome. Have your evidence and say what you've promised and the outcomes that we see based on this evidence, they are not in alignment. Call us out. Call us out through your organizations such as SGA. Utilize media, and I say media, I'm talking about your student newspapers. Writing letters, making sure leaders hear your concerns, organize. There are appropriate ways to do that, and you need to be learning how to do that now. Because if you're concerned with justice, if you're concerned with fairness, if you're concerned with equity, then you need to be learning really now how to effectively do these things and organize them across differences, because you're going to be faced with these same issues when you go into graduate school, when you go to to your professional institutional life in the private sector, or whatever it is you're going to be doing when you leave here. What are you learning now to address your attention to inequities or inappropriate behaviors by those who are, quote, in authority? I hope that's not too vague of a response to your question, but I think it really gets to that. I can say more. Does that really get to your question, Brett?
Yes, in certain ways. I appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Burnley.
You're welcome. Other questions, comments, suggestions, observations? I'm here to learn as well.
I have a quick question, I think, if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. You mentioned the dialogue zones, and I really appreciate that idea. And I was just wondering if you could expand on it, when those happen, who can come, what that is, because I really want to learn more about that.
Great. Now, thanks for the question. So the dialogue zone is located in the library in terms of the physical space. A lot of the work is being delivered online, obviously now because of the reality of COVID. Dr. Jason Combs in communication is the coordinator of the dialogue zone. He also works very closely with Julio Quintero from my office and Megan Wolf from MEC. The Dialogue Zone has a website. If you go online, just Google Dialogue Zone in the search engine, and you'll find the kinds of offerings, sessions, workshops, dialogues that they have scheduled currently. They're also very open to working with SGA or other entities across the campus to develop a space for dialogue on any number of topics. You know, they will serve as consultants for you and help you craft the space. SGA, I know you're dealing with some issues that, you know, one or two. And so if you're wanting to bring together a group who may think very differently, or individuals or groups about some very, you know, difficult issues or complex issues, they will sit down with you, help you design it, and work with you to facilitate dialogue. So it's a wonderful resource, and we're really excited about this resource for the campus. You'll see some universities who have very, very robust infrastructure built around dialogue, and we're on our road to doing the same. Thanks for that question.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Natalie, how are we doing on time?
Pretty good. If anybody else has any other questions, though, like, please feel free to ask them. Time doesn't matter in that aspect.
Okay.
So I had a quick question. I wrote this down. Yeah. So you mentioned social media earlier, and a lot of the hate crime and speech often happens, I feel like, behind the scene on social media. Mm-hmm. Where's you and your committee's stance on how to improve this? I feel like it's hard. It's a lot harder than how to control it in person, but how do you control it on social media?
Yeah, I don't know if we can. That to be very honest with you. Social media has become a venue where people, quite frankly, really abuse it and say some very hurtful things without, you know, taking ownership, right, in terms of their voices that espouse, you know, certain types of perspectives. Some very offensive. I don't know the answer to that, Benjamin. It's a real challenge. And quite frankly, I'll be open to your ideas how we can better do that. I know our marketing and communication department spends significant time in scanning and really assessing kind of, you know, messaging coming out social through venues of various social media outlets, assessing and evaluating how it's impacting you know, communities and persons within our community, how our institution is being represented. We do try to, our office, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, quite frankly, we're just now developing a kind of a social media presence. That's an area of growth for us, quite frankly, that we need to really build on. To, you know, because if there are things that are, and you know, how are we getting our message out through social media? The university obviously has a very strong social media presence, but I know our office in particular, that's an area of growth, so that we can maybe, you know, you know, social media is ways that, you know, you in your generation, this is how you're communicating, and we need to be more effective in terms of developing our capacity to be present in that space. I wish I had a more definitive answer. I'll be interested, you know, do you have ideas, Benjamin, or anyone else about things that you think we can do that we're not doing in that space?
If I could get your contact, I definitely would want to talk to you about that. I just wanted to bring it up to your attention because I feel like it is a very important part.
Okay, I will do that. And what I will do, I will probably set up a meeting with members of our staff to have that conversation if you're okay with that. And when you contact me, I'm going to I'll respond by I just put my email address in the chat, and I will respond with my assistant Paula Stewart to set up a time for us to connect. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
I have a comment to make in relation to the social media thing and like an idea like that I have. Mm-hmm. I don't know who runs the social media page, but I noticed around the time that the anti-racism march and rally was being organized, a bunch of my friends and I DM'd like the Instagram page and asked if they could put out the flyers for that so we could get our voice heard and have a big show out for that event. And the university Instagram page said they would, like, to multiple people. This was like more than like a good 3 people that asked them, and then they didn't. So like I feel like even stuff like that, like even if they're not like mediating conflicts, they could at least stand in solidarity with movements that are trying to combat anti-racism by at least like showing other students, because they have a good enough following to where people would like hear them more than they would hear the Met community about anti-racism things.
So is it Sama or
Sama?
Sama.
Mm-hmm.
Sama. Okay, Sama. Thanks for raising that. And I want to use that maybe as an example of, like, okay, how do you as students address that? You know, for instance, okay, so you've had this experience, you made this request, you're saying that so the person in marketing communications, I'm not sure who you communicated with, didn't deliver. So what would be your next step? And I'm receiving this information here. But one way to address that is will really be in writing to that person and asking for an explanation. Why wasn't that delivered? And position yourself, because there'll be another opportunity. There will be another occasion, under similar circumstances that can be influenced by how you address this situation. Sama, what are you doing? I mean, I hear you bringing that up here, but are there steps that you've taken? We're talking about accountability. So if something was said that would be done and it wasn't done, how are you addressing that? What's your follow-up?
Sama, the person who runs.
Sama, I'm sorry.
The person who runs the social media, her name is Jen Clark. I can find her email and I'll drop it in the chat. But that's definitely something to bring up to her, because I know Jen Clark has been working really hard to kind of platform the multicultural community on like UD's page. But just because she's working hard doesn't mean that you can't hold her accountable. She wants to be better. She wants to be held accountable. So I'm going to drop her email in the chat, and I think that you should definitely send her an email, and I can proofread it. If you'd like me to, you can CC me. But yeah, Jen Clark does all the social media stuff. So that's definitely something that she's open to taking care of and open to hearing.
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah,
Thanks for saying that.
I'm gonna find her email right now.
Thanks for saying that. And sometimes there's this notion of intent and impact. I mean, who knows? Find out the why first. What happened, and then how do we address this moving forward? To avoid that kind of occurrence again. And that's the way, again, you can leverage your power, right, as students, to follow up and really hold people accountable. And hold people accountable is not a bad thing, right? I think there are appropriate ways to do that. So I'll be interested to know about the outcome of that. Jen Clark is she really is trying to utilize and leverage her role to in this area. So other questions? Daniel, is that a hand up there?
I think that's another head behind me.
Oh, okay.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm gonna out myself here. It was actually my own little mouse. It was my own little icon. My little hand is sitting on top of Daniel. Sorry about that. Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions for Dr. Burnley right now?
Can I ask you a question? So what's the plan for, and I'm not trying to draw any attention to the situation that took place in Academic Senate some weeks ago, but what's the committee? Unity and not Unity Community.
Campus Unity. Campus Unity.
Yeah, I thought that was a really powerful committee. I remember a couple of years ago, I participated in some of the Tough Talks. And I thought that was a wonderful model that you all really, it was a gift to this community, quite frankly, led by students to bring together, faculty, staff, students, primarily students, but faculty and staff were present to really create a space to lean into some difficult, complex issues. Is there any plan to continue that or something like that moving forward?
Yes, so that position is actually vacant right now, the Director of Campus Unity position. So right now our biggest goal is to kind of figure out an appointment process for that, appoint someone, and get the ball rolling on those types of events again.
Well, if the person, or if you as SGA are intending to create the kind of tough talk space, I think that would be a wonderful opportunity to partner with the dialogue zone. This is, that would be the resources there will just be extremely valuable for that, creating that kind of space. And my guess is, you all know as well as I do, the challenges we're facing as a nation. I'm praying a lot as we move closer to the election. I hope you're all voting. But as we move beyond that, we have a lot of challenges to face. So having those spaces where we can be civil and learn how to listen and engage in some very effective ways will be very important. So I'm encouraged to hear that this is something that you're planning on pursuing.
Yeah, so actually, Dr. Burnley, after the last time that we met, Annie and I reached out to the Dialogue Zone, and they'll be coming to our Senate this coming week to speak.
Yes, oh, that's great. And by the way, I should have mentioned, you all know this, but Natalie is your representative at the University Inclusive Excellence Council. We're really kind of as a council, we're kind of in our embryonic stage of development. It's very new, but very happy to have Natalie, and there are 4 other students, some undergraduates and graduate students that are part of that. So thank you, Natalie, for your leadership, and thank you all for the work that you're doing to help us move toward being.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, just saying thank you for helping us being what I believe God is calling us to be as an institution. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to thank you again for taking time out of your Sunday evening to be here. I know that I really appreciate it, as well as a lot of other people in the Zoom really appreciate you being here. So thank you.
You're very welcome. And anytime, I'm happy to come back and support you in any way I can or have conversations. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, Grant, would you like to kick off attendance?
Good evening, everybody. James Brill.
Here.
Jada Brown.
Here.
Jules Carr-Chelman.
Present.
Natalie Coppolino.
Here.
Morgan Cox is not here. Lillian Dickman.
Here.
Jesse Edwards.
Here.
Michael Fields.
Here.
Sophia Garcia.
Here.
Jessica Garvin. Jessica. Mason Gordon.
Here.
Daniel Hennessy.
Present.
Anna Hobie.
Here.
Andrew Hubert.
Here.
Jake Jagels.
In attendance.
Bridget Mooney.
Here.
Drew Moyer.
Here.
Ryan Pearson.
Here.
Annie Philbin.
Here.
Grace Perucci.
Here.
Kat Pistone.
Here.
Tommy Reese.
Here.
Jack Santee.
Here.
Kelly Stewart.
Here.
Ben Thomas.
Here.
Jacob Troutwine.
Here.
And Rachel Veneman.
Here.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody.
All right, so we are going to jump back to public announcements now. Does anyone have any public announcements? Okay, seeing none, we are going to go into public comments and concerns. I dropped the link to the Google Doc in the chat, so if anybody wants to speak, just feel free to add your name to that. So Jada, I think you're first up on there, so just go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Okay. So just as Dr. Burnley was bringing up the campus unity position, I think it's very obvious to all of us that Tom, or I guess I won't say the campus unity director, did resign very publicly to SGA and also posted it on social media. So on behalf of myself and other members of the Met community, I kind of wanted to bring up this and kind of start the conversation for how as SGA we can further combat this issue, because there was a lot of problematic things said in that email that I really want to tackle within, I'm not going to go all the way to 10 minutes, but within my time on the public comments floor. And then I know other people within the community also had comments as well. So I just want to say, I tried to get Dr. Burnley to stay here so he could kind of hear some of this conversation, but it is very clear that on behalf of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and especially on behalf of President Spina, that the University of Dayton's anti-racism policy explicitly is saying and states that systemic racism is a problem. It's a problem in the nation. It's a problem on campus. It's a problem everywhere. And so I don't think that's something that we can debate on. And I want to make that very, 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 very clear, because even though whoever sent the email is not present right now, I know there are people within the Senate who definitely have the same type of mindset that critical race theory and systemic racism isn't an opinion, and that it's a hypothesis and it is something that can be debated on. And we shouldn't be spending our first 3, 4, however many times Senate meetings trying to convince the student body that systemic racism is real, and that SGA stands with students of color, and that SGA stands against racism. That's not a conversation that we should be having. And we're having that conversation, and it hasn't been present within the past couple of years, but it's present now. And then we wonder why SGA is so low in diversity. We wonder why SGA doesn't have more students of color, more students from underrepresented groups coming. What kind of example are we setting as an organization if we're debating and getting confused on a simple definition of experiences that students of color face on an everyday basis? So that's kind of just how I wanted to start out. You know, the critical race theory that keeps getting brought up, like a lot of people tend to think that like it's a theory, like it's a guess, it's something. No, it's like the evolutionary theory. It's like physics theory. It has facts, it has science, it has data, it has everything behind it to back up. And so I just don't understand what we as SGA are so stuck on. And I also think that, and I'm stating this specifically from the email itself, so this is public information, so I'm not disclosing anything that hasn't been stated out publicly. But one of the things that the campus unity director was referred, one of the charges was a concern for the common good and to be cognizant of their personal actions and how it will affect members of the community. We took it out of the bylaws last week. So we're taking something out of the bylaws that rightfully somebody was held accountable for, and we took it out. So basically, we're kind of allowing this kind of thing to happen again. And we're allowing members of SGA to hold these kind of statements that harm so many different students of color not accountable. And that's just what we were talking about with Dr. Burnley. That's just what we were talking about. We're talking about how frustrated we are that there's no accountability and that nobody's being held responsible. But then we're changing our bylaws and we're changing the way that we can charge people with this kind of thing. We're taking it out so this thing can happen again. So I really just think it's time for us to really look into the systemic racist organization that we are. Because honestly, almost all organizations at the University of Dayton that aren't Black or minority based, have some type of systemic racism and white supremacy ingrained into them. It's ingrained into their bylaws, it's ingrained into their constitution, it's ingrained into their elections, it's ingrained into everything. And so I'm really just preaching, I'm begging that we as an organization need to look into everything that is making us such a harmful force to the students of color on campus. I won't speak anymore on the email, but I do have to say, if somebody isn't willing to make that compromise, not even compromise, if somebody is willing to be that openly against like students of colors, then in any position in SGA, it needs to be reevaluated. It needs to be challenged. Like, we can't let stuff like this keep passing, because that is why we're in the situation that we are today. And I also think that it's extremely, this is the last point I'll make. I think it's extremely problematic to list people who are disagreeing with the disgusting things, I'll say it because they were disgusting, that were said in the academic senate, in our first senate of the year, within this email, to call them radical left and to make it a political issue. It's not a political issue. I don't know how many times that students of color have to keep bringing up this point, but it's not a political issue. Racism isn't a political issue. It's not. There's no debate about that. It's not a political issue. It's really not. It's an issue on students of color. It's an issue of discrimination. It's an issue of privilege. It's an issue of the system that is oppressing an entire group of people. It's not right or left. It's not Democratic or Republicans. It's not radical left and radical right. No, it's human beings versus white supremacists. And so that's all I have to say. I wish the person who said and wrote these disgusting statements were here right now to hear this, but I hope that they see it on YouTube and decide to respond at their own will. But I just truly hope and pray that SGA does not stand behind this in any way, shape, or form, and that this year that we are taking the right actions to make sure that something like this never happens again. And that's all I have to say.
Jada, everything that you said, I completely agree with. I know that we've had conversations kind of surrounding this. So definitely am agreeing with everything there. To clarify again, this person is not in the organization anymore, and we are taking looks at bylaws and constitutional changes and ways that we can move forward as an anti-racist student-led organization. A group of us did meet Friday morning to discuss some things that we can do to hold ourselves accountable and to implement different action steps. And we will be kind of meeting again this week to finalize those as well. But would the next person like to go ahead and unmute themselves in the document?
Natalie?
Yeah.
May I speak for 10 seconds?
Yeah, if it pertains directly to something that Jada said.
It does.
Okay, yeah.
I just want to say real quick that this conversation is making many people uncomfortable, and it very well should. And these are the kind of conversations that we need to be willing to have. And I think it's good that we're having them.
Thanks, Jesse. Okay, would the next person like to go ahead whenever they're ready?
That would be me. Thank you for making that comment, Jesse, as well. But basically, I was just going to go off of what Jada was saying about what the email was addressing. In his email, he was basically saying that he wasn't found guilty of not doing his job, and it was like 2 other charges that he was found guilty of. I think that's very concerning that with everything that he's done thus far, he still wasn't found guilty of not doing his job. if doing his job is supposed to be for campus unity and supposed to be for uniting and everybody and accepting all races and not putting his 2 cents in about his opinions, then why wasn't he found guilty of that? And he would have still been here today if he didn't decide, oh, let me resign all of a sudden. So I think that's really concerning that SGA would even let him still be here with everything that he's already done. And he definitely dug himself a deeper hole with everything else he said after. Just because he resigned, he felt like he could go on with this critical race theory and how we make white people uncomfortable unnecessarily. That's not like, it's just like what Jesse was saying, like people are supposed to be feeling uncomfortable. This has been going on for too long. Like, aren't we feeling uncomfortable on a daily basis with everything that goes on? Why do we have to care for people in a position of power and the majority feeling uncomfortable? Like, they can experience that for once too. It's just frustrating. And I just wanted to say that we should be also holding the committee accountable, because before he resigned, he was going to interview people and have it be filled with different positions from different organizations, but that should already be set in, that it would be required that a member from different organizations join in, because had he had a committee set up, he wouldn't say a lot of the ignorant stuff that he did and speak on campus unity like that. And I just want to know what next steps are being taken to put someone new in his position, because I believe this time we're definitely going to be in on the action of holding the new person accountable. And we hope that person can do a much better job of unifying campus.
Thank you for that, Sama. To your point, we are kind of looking at appointing people. We don't know if the best way to go about that is an application or an interview process. We're not sure, because we've had a lot of interest in this position already. So we will continue to keep all of you updated on that as well. But thank you for your comment, and whoever is next, please go ahead.
So Natalie, can you make sure that people have an opportunity to respond to each public comment and concern if there are any responses? Sama, I appreciate everything you shared. I do want to share that parts of the email that many of us received may have been incorrect or misleading. And so while we can't, due to confidentiality, we can't speak to what happened in the JRB, I can say that parts of that email were incorrect or misleading.
Okay, but is there any way to find out what would be? Because like now we're being misled by his email, and we're led to believe that like maybe some of it was true on student government's part. How can we hold you guys accountable if we don't get to know any details about it, and we're just left blank to stare off into space and think, oh, maybe this part of the email was wrong or this part of the email. So now we start making assumptions and we don't know what he said is true or not. So that's why we continue to assume like a lot of wrongs are being done in SGA, because we have no other reason to believe so. There's no public statements. And I understand the nature of that, but it's still frustrating at the same time, because we don't get to have information where we can understand why some of the things that are being done are being done.
I very much just understand that. So this week, Attorney General Gordon and I are meeting to talk about ways to change and improve our internal judicial processes, as well as some other bylaws changes. To your other point about representation on the Campus Unity Committee, some of that legislation we hoped to have ready tonight, but we want to do it right. And so the plan is to have legislation updating the bylaws probably ready for next week.
All right, thank you for that.
Maya, I think that you're next on the thing, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Alrighty, thank you, Natalie. Hello, everyone. For those of you who do not know me, My name is Maya. I held the position of Director of Campus Unity during the 2018-2019 school year. I was the co-creator of the Tough Talk series, also co-creator of the U Diversity modules that everyone has to complete, and collaborator of the AIM4 survey. So as you understand, some of these issues have been brought to my attention, mostly via email, and I feel that it's very important that we talk about it as well. One of my main concerns right now is that not only I think it was inappropriate that I was copied on as many emails as I was about the issues of my former position, it says a lot about how poorly SGA is managing it and supervising it. I personally find this incredibly disheartening, and I find it upsetting that the committee is actively excluding people from membership. I also think it's inappropriate that SGA fails to support campus unity. To fail to support that and to withdraw access to it is discontinuing minority access and honestly excluding minorities, and also the failure to continue diversity education is actively discriminating against minority students. Now, there's nothing wrong with asking someone who has held the position for advice, but the recently resigned director has had to come to me a lot for help with it, and it is very reflective of SGA's failure to do training when entering a position and support your team members. It's really reflective of an inefficient team. So I have some questions for you, and I am looking forward to your response. What disciplinary action will be pursued against this misconduct that occurred via email? What measures are in place to ensure that this does not occur again and that someone competent will be appointed to the position? And what will be done to bring back the award-winning Tough Talk series and ensure that it resumes indefinitely? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Maya. Mackenzie, I think that you're next in the document.
Are y'all going to answer her question?
I can speak a little bit if no one else wants to about Maya's questions.
Yes, I'd like to.
Specifically to your last question about Tough Talks, I know either last week or 2 weeks ago when our former director of Campus Unity had given us the idea that he was doing with Tough Talks, a number of students in SGA stood up and said that that is not right and that we like the Tough Talks and want them to continue. I'm all for adding that to the job description in the bylaws, that the next director of Campus Unity and every director of Campus Unity after that has to continue those, because I think those are very beneficial to campus, and I would like it in writing that those continue.
Maya, I completely apologize. I thought you just wanted me to us to reflect on those. I didn't realize you wanted an immediate response. I didn't mean to just glaze over. I apologize.
No, I would like to hear from really everyone. I think these past few weeks have been a little ridiculous. And as I said, the fact that I am no longer a part of SGA, but I am being actively copied on emails. And I have had members seeking me for guidance, which is fine. But what are you doing internally to help your team members, support your team members, and to work together as a team? Because clearly SGA also needs to work together as a team a lot better. So what are you going to do to make sure this next director of Campus Unity is held accountable in their position? They are competent, they are ready for it, and they want to work with the MEC community.
Without speaking too much into anything, because I don't want to get into the confidentiality type things of the JRB or JRAB proceedings, I and Annie aren't allowed to be even in that vote. We don't have a vote or a say in that. So we really don't know what went on in there. However, where we need to start is our constitution and bylaws and looking through those with a fine-tooth comb to ensure that they do hold people in these positions accountable to do their job and to do their job efficiently and effectively. So that's where we really need to start, in my opinion. If any other SGA member has an idea, I know that we've had meetings about this already, but feel free to bring it up now.
No, I think to Natalie's point too, she did mention it earlier. I know a small group of us, we set up a meeting last Friday. I know Jada was able to make it. Not everybody was able to make it. Annie was there. A few of us were able to meet to talk about some things that we wanted to see happen and move forward. Natalie has created a Google Doc of those ideas. And one of them was, I guess, I don't think it's confidential, but I think one of them was for SGA to hold town halls. Jada had a terrific idea at this. She brought it up, and it's something we're going to continue to talk about to have a more public space, not just for the Met community, but for students all across campus, but one specific town hall just for the Met community to make sure their voices are being heard and that they are able to be had on this platform and that we are able to hear those voices. But I think to Tommy's point too, another thing that we did talk about was putting it in the bylaws that it was required that they had a certain amount of events or tough talks per semester, and something going into that to make it a permanent change and not something that could be not something that could be changed by the difference of the person in that role. It's something that's ingrained in the definition of what Tommy touched on, if that helps at all.
Thank you. I think adding it to the bylaws would be a great step. I also think that setting more strict requirements for your positions would be a great step. Unfortunately, affirmative action is required to make sure that people are actively included. And I think that that's something that you should make sure is written so that in the future, access, diversity education, and things like that are no longer optional. It shouldn't be up to the merit of the person in the position for it to continue. It should be happening.
No, I full-heartedly agree, and I know a lot of other members do as well. And like Natalie had said earlier, I know Chris and Attorney General Gordon are meeting this week to review a lot of our issues and bylaws.
Do you think it'd be possible for me to speak on some of the bylaws changes that I'm thinking about doing, just so we can sort of stop spinning our wheels here? If that's cool, Natalie.
Yeah, I think if you want to clarify some of that and dive a little bit deeper into that, maybe that.
All right, so I'll start with the part that we removed that someone was found guilty of. It was a complicated charge to prosecute on because whenever there's an and, that basically makes it two charges. So you have to decide if they're guilty of one half of it or they're guilty of the entire charge, yada, yada, yada. And then we had to have like 6 individual votes just to get through one charge, which that one charge took like an hour. So that's why we kind of are reworking that one. It's going to be put back into the bylaws. It's just issues and bylaws hasn't met yet because we're kind of just going to have one giant meeting and fix a ton of stuff at the same time. Going on to some of the ideas that we're planning on putting in. So I was considering the constitutional amendment to add a committee for diversity and inclusion. Yeah, you can find the Constitution. I'm not sure you can find it. It's probably on our 1850. Brian says yes. All right, so anyway, I was planning on creating a committee for diversity and inclusivity. We weren't sure if creating a new committee was a good idea, so basically most of the ideas that I had for that committee can be just put into Campus Unity. So that includes, I'll just go into the details of it, creating sort of an application process for student organizations to apply for to have a student representative on the campus union committee. So essentially, because there's already a AAA seat on Campus Unity, and so I feel like for there to be a AAA seat, there should also be a BATU seat, an EOL seat, an MSA seat. There should be a seat available for any student organization that fits a certain criteria of being underrepresented on campus, so that they may have proper representation on campus. Anybody have any questions about that?
Mason, I do have one question on that. In a meeting with a couple of SGA representatives, they mentioned that Tanyu was considering not asking the AAA representative to return. Do you know if there will be an amendment to the bylaws to state that the director of Campus Unity is unable to deny acceptance to a...
Yeah, so let me get into that. So there's more details that I kind of forgot to mention. So one of them is exactly that. I worked on this with Jada last week. There would be a clause stating that if a group can be argued to fit a certain criteria, and it's just the long list that SGA usually uses of like minority-based groups. If they fit that criteria, they cannot be declined. And then if they were declined for, like, say one day down the road, there's a director and they are not fond of a certain group and they decline that group entry into the Campus Unity Committee, they're not allowed to do that. Therefore, they could be brought to JRB. Hoping that by that day, JRB is fixed, because it's kind of rough right now. It'll be fixed though. So any other questions?
And I was going to clarify, I know it says like certain criteria, and that kind of makes it sound like, oh, like there has to be like, you have to do X, Y, Z. Like it sounds like it can be kind of like exclusive. But what I actually discussed with Mason, and I brought up in my lead team meeting, because MEC has a lead team. And basically, for those who don't know, the lead team is basically like MEC's, all the organizations that fall under MEC. So that's like BATU, EOL, AAA, ASA, all of Black Greek Life, and PHC. So the MEC community is pretty familiar with lead team, especially the leaders, because we have a calendar, because we make sure that we don't schedule over each other's events. So what I was saying with like this position was that we incorporate lead team into the committee. So then that way, any org under lead team that wants representation can get representation. And then obviously I think it's really important to emphasize that like there is accountability that can be held towards like the director of whatever. So then that way they can't just deny a group from joining. And I think that's really important, because, you know, we don't want any like type of discrimination. We want it to be that anybody who wants to be represented within this committee is allowed to be in this committee and is allowed to have their voice heard. So, and it's not just MEC group. We talked about having, you know, like Spectrum in there as well. So, you know, other religiously affiliated groups, all that. So I just wanted to clarify that as well.
Does anybody else have a question about the changes to bylaws? Seeing none, go ahead and go back to the list of whoever was next to speak. Thank you all for your time.
So before anyone talks, I want to answer one of the questions that wasn't answered before from Brett, just like defining the town hall. So in our meeting, the purpose of it was basically to just have like an open space for students to comfortably be able to talk to each other. Also, we kind of could tell like it can be intimidating to come into a meeting with all SGA members and being unrepresented. So we wanted to have a separate meeting so that we can make sure that we're hearing all of your voices and you're not feeling overpowered. So I hope that answers it.
It was
yeah.
So I had the idea of a MEC town hall because I think like you know, we talk about this stuff in Senate, but I think it needs to be put on a bigger platform, and it needs to be put on something where the only thing that we are talking about is the relationship in between SGA and the Met community. And so having like an open like space, you know, kind of like a town hall when they like ask the president stuff, like not necessarily political, but, you know, having that like space that's specifically for addressing racism and other discrimination and issues within SGA on a platform that consistently happens. So we did talk about having these town halls on a regular basis, like implementing them into programming that SGA does every year. This isn't set in stone, but it's within like the meeting that we had on Friday, but basically having, I said like once a semester, but it's not, you know, set in stone. But yes, let's see. Yeah. And I mean, Dr. Burnley, he said today that he would love to have that kind of thing. So, I mean, we could even get him involved as well. But I think the town hall would be really focused on like, you know, addressing certain situations that happen in between SGA and MEC and trying to build that bridge in between like both of us, because I think the MEC community can be very like beneficial and can benefit SGA in so many different ways. So having something where SGA can be like commonly notified on stuff that's happening, or can be commonly like acknowledged on like different issues, I thought that would just be very beneficial for it to happen on like a regular basis. Because I feel like there's just a gap, and there's some like really racist things that happen on campus, and you know, in our MEC lounge or in our group chat, we talk about it and it's like all we can talk about, but then we come to SGA and like nobody knows what's going on. So yeah, that was the idea behind the town hall. I know that was really long, but
Mackenzie, did you want to go ahead whenever you're ready?
Yes, thank you. Hello, my name is Mackenzie Henry. I'm a sophomore at UD. I put everything that I'm going to say in the chat just in case you forgot what I was going to say or just not listening. But so hello, my name is Mackenzie Henry. I was wondering, since the prior director of Campus Unity had some interesting ideals, is there any senators on the board whose ideas are similar to any of these that I am about to list? So believing systematic racism is a theory/concept. 2, that this is a political issue and that the public talking to you today are considered the radical left. 3, there is an opinion or a different view on systematic racism rather than just being wrong. And then 4, systematic racism is a Marxist ideology. And this is a question I have for all board members and not just one. And I've added these statements in the chat, as I said before, in case you forgot, and I would appreciate you all to be honest. And yeah, I believe it's important for us to know where the board stands.
So I suppose that all senators now have to respond to that in some way, or none of them do right now, right? Natalie, or, you know, I'm not sure how this proceeds, but she's asking all of us.
Are you like asking us to take a quiz and give you the answers, or do you want us to go one by one on floor? It's public comments and concerns, so be specific.
I think she asked a question, and I think she's waiting for a response from SGA board members. It's not a multiple choice quiz. It's very much answer the questions that were asked.
Yeah, so I'll just go ahead and kick that off. So to all of that, I don't agree with any of that or any of the other ideals that the former director of Campus Unity pushed through. If anybody else would like to go ahead and voice their thoughts on that, please go right ahead. SGA members, that is.
I'll go, because I think a lot of this is being put on SGA as a whole. His email was not sent to any of us. We didn't get to see it before he said a lot of the very hurtful statements. And I know a lot of individuals do not agree with anything that he said, including me.
I can go after Bridget. So I am Caitlin Pistoni. I'm chief of staff. So I'm not a voting senator or anything, but this is kind of the time that I actually get to speak in Senate. And I am very for your guys' side. It's not about politics. This isn't about if you're a Democrat or Republican, and it's not something you can agree with or you can't agree with. Like, this is obviously affecting our campus, and the statements that were made did not help. The only thing that I have to say is I want to be behind you guys, want to stand with you guys, and I want to help you in any way that you need. So if you think that is by being a part of like the appointment of a new director of campus unity, if you think there's any way I as chief of staff can help you guys get this moved to the forefront of any issues that we're taking on, I'm not sure how I can do that, but I want to be open for any communication with you guys. Like, I am here and I want to be informed and I want to attend as much and get as much information as I can get from you guys.
I'd like to go next since my name is in the chat a lot. I believe that systematic racism is real and it's a legitimate issue. And I don't believe that saying systematic racism is Marxist is an insult per se, because that would say that Marxism is inherently bad. I don't think that even all aspects of Marxism are bad. And I would also like to clarify that I personally am trying to make great strides within SGA and the bylaws to make it more inclusive and diverse. Clearly, I am on your side with this, so.
Would you like to go, Grace?
Sure. Yeah, I believe systemic racism is an issue on campus, and I don't like that it's being it's not a political issue. So.
I just want to say real quick, the reason why it was taken by many as a personal attack is because, and a negative thing, is because he was clearly, the former director was clearly comparing it to things that have negative connotations in this country and on campus everywhere. And I just want to say as well that I agree with everything that she asked about. I agree that all of it is wrong. Systemic racism is real. I think it's bad to deny that, and I stand with the people who come to make public comments and want them to know that there are senators with them, and it's not just me.
I can go next. I'm not a senator, but I don't agree with anything that the former director of Campus Unity said, and I fully support this conversation.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm a junior class representative. Yeah, I'd like to say I do not hold these views. I'm fully on board with, anything to move forward. There is change that needs to be done, and yeah, anything within SGA, within throughout the campus, and even specifically the junior class, I am definitely on board with kind of making that change.
I can go real quick if no one else. Okay. So I'm Ryan Pearson. I'm the director of special programs for SGA. So I oversee our kind of like our events and stuff that happen. I was told by the former director that he was considering at one point discontinuing Tough Talks, and I was completely in disagreement with that. I've seen how powerful those conversations can be. I've attended a lot of them, and I've seen how they can really help people who come into that maybe just for a path point, like actually learn something, and they're very powerful. So I was completely against discontinuing those or changing them in any way. I would also like to say that in our, I don't remember the number of the bill from, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, the Moving Forward as an Anti-Racist Organization piece of legislation. I was part of the group that like kind of put that together and presented it on Senate floor. And I do regret that we were not clearer that I think we can say it's safe that as an institution, as an organization, we would like to say that SGA is we agree that systemic racism is real, that it's a problem, and that it influences so many different students across campus, unfortunately. And I wish we had included that in the legislation. And if anyone, I think we're trying to figure out how to go forward to figure out how to include some more of this language in our resolutions and bills and changing the bylaws and stuff like that. But I am completely in disagreement with what was said before.
I would like to speak as well. I'm Sophia. I'm the sophomore class representative, one of them this year, and I like to say I'm also in disagreement with the old campus unity director statements. I joined SGA so I could promote students' rights and create more transparency within this organization. So as other representatives said, if any sophomores want to reach out, talk to me for any ideas, I'm always here to talk. Thank you.
I can go ahead next if nobody else is going to. All right, so I just want to make it clear that I stand with and agree with all of the students here this evening that are advocating for their position. And I believe systemic racism is undeniably a problem in America and on our campus for that matter. I don't talk a whole lot because it's my job to listen and to learn here about these things. And I just want all of you here today to know that you're a fundamental part of that learning and my listening in this matter. So I want to thank all of you, and I want you all to know that what you're doing is right, and what you're doing is democracy, and that democracy is beautiful. So thank you. And just to be honest, these last couple meetings have been very inspiring for me to see students come up and be able to speak like this and be given their time. So thank you.
Hi everyone, sorry, I really don't have a voice. I lost it this weekend, but I'm Hannah Hobie. I'm a junior class representative, and I just wanted to thank everyone for coming to these meetings repeatedly. We really appreciate it, and I love hearing from all of you, and please keep coming. We really appreciate it.
I'll go after Hannah. My name is Drew Moyer. I'm also a junior class representative. I also wanted to say that I do not agree with the statements for that the former Campus Unity director held, and I would like to echo what Hannah and many others have said, that we appreciate you guys coming here, and we look forward to making strides to make us a more equitable and anti-racist organization.
I'm James Brill. I'm the Director of Academic Affairs. I would like to say that I strongly disagree with all of those ideas that he expressed. And I would also echo that I thank all of you for coming to these meetings, because this really helps us, and this really helps the campus as well. And so I want to thank you for that, and I want you to keep reaching out to us throughout this entire year. It really helps.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael Fields and I am the Vice President of Finance. I would also like to echo everybody else's point and show that I do support this conversation that's happening.
Hello, my name is Ben Thomas and I am a first-year class representative. I was not able to attend the Welcome Weekend due to being on an Army ROTC trip, but what I have heard and seen these past weeks, I do not agree at all with what he said.
Okay, so I've been informed that this has gone past the 10-minute mark that is in our bylaws, unfortunately, for each conversation topic. However, there may be, we can like vote to extend it.
I say vote to extend it because it's very important that every single SGA member needs to state whether or not they disagree with what the old CU director said. That is very important. We need to definitely extend this time because Mackenzie hasn't been speaking, and honestly, it would have been done by now if everybody would have just put on their mics and answer. So let's extend it.
Jake Jagels, do you want to carry that out?
Sure. Do we have a list of like who's gone so far, or just how do we want to do this?
If you haven't gone, go. I'll go. I think it's been very obvious, but I am against systemic racism since it's an issue that affects me every single day. Racism is not a political issue. Black Lives Matter isn't a political issue. You can't have a debate on racism, and systemic racism is not a Marxist ideology, hands down, period. Just in case anybody was questioning that from my perspective, but.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Daniel Hennessy. I'm a sophomore class representative. Definitely agree with everything Jada just said there. And I'm definitely in disagreement with everything from the former director of Campus Unity's points. Being a minority myself, this is something that is also very important to me. And I'm definitely looking for ways that we can better our organization as well. So thank you to everybody who's been coming to these meetings and really helping to bring this up.
Hi, my name is Jacob Troutwine. I'm a senior senator. I would like to state that I do not agree with any of Director Wode's former director's statements. I agree with the statements that were said by everyone, honestly. The one thing that I will add, though, is I do think that people do still have the right to free speech and their own opinions. And I would worry that people would be like sometimes attacking other people just based on their beliefs. While I totally disagree with the idea that like systemic racism isn't a thing. It definitely is. It exists on campus. And I definitely agree with everyone on that perspective. I do feel that there is a lot of risk for some people who might not share my view or might not share our views. And just that like calling people out on that, I think is dangerous and could definitely like maybe hurt them.
Calling people out on racism is dangerous. You can have your own views, but people are allowed to criticize you on whatever you say, especially if you're speaking on a position and on behalf of an organization. So yes, people do have a right to free speech. People can say whatever they want. The former CU can say whatever he wants, but that also means that he's open to criticism and he's open to being held accountable for it.
No, and I totally agree with that. I think that Tong Yu spoke from a position when he shouldn't have been speaking from his position. If he clearly holds those beliefs personally, and I don't think that they are in alignment with SGA's views, nor the views of any of us here who are present today. I think that they were definitely anti what SGA stands for. But at the same time, I think that he still does have that ability, according to his First Amendment rights, to have that act of free speech on a personal level. While it's wrong, what he said in general, it's untruthful, it's not right, but he does still have the ability to say that from just his own personal perspective. I think it gets very dangerous when we start like turning it into like this conversation of because I disagree with you, there's like animosity. We need to like have this coming together and
we can't disagree on
these issues.
Racism.
Sorry?
We can't disagree on racism. As an organization, as SGA, as representatives of the student body, we cannot agree with racism.
I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying I disagree with you. I totally agree with you. And I think we need to make these steps. I've been actively trying to help make these steps to make it better. And the thing is, I just really get worried when the people should never feel like they're being attacked. You shouldn't feel like you're ever being attacked. I feel like Tong, you shouldn't feel like he was ever being attacked. But I know that just in general, I feel like we need to be calm about this and approach it in a way that's very much like, reasoned, and that is about trying to make sure that we're doing so in a way that's respectful.
Are we not being respectful? We have a whole sign-up sheet. Students in the comments are respectfully putting in the chat. Nobody's really interjected with each other. There's nothing disrespectful. This is a public space. Students are allowed to say their opinions. And I believe as an anti-racist organization, we should have no problem condemning racism.
Yeah, and in the statement that I put out, none of it was like, oh, if you disagree with this, we're here to attack you. This is just seeing everybody's stance on the board. Of course, everybody has their right to say whatever they feel. So that's why we're asking to see what the board of SGA, the student government of the University of Dayton, feels.
The thing about it is sometimes I feel like people also like, I don't know. I just feel like
Am I allowed to pop in?
Yeah.
Anybody have an objection? I just want to pop in really quick, kind of echo what everyone's been saying. My name is Kelly Stewart. I'm a senior senator. I've been in SGA for 4 years now, so I was a senator my first year too, and I just want to say this is probably the most activism, the most engagement with our constituents that I've ever seen in my time here, and I think it's great, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I stand behind you, and I do not stand behind the statements Tong you made, especially in his role as director of Campus Unity. And I just want to say I'm excited for kind of the transition that hopefully we have this year to a more positive and inclusive future for campus and for SGA.
I just also want to just reiterate that I totally stand with you guys in this. I'm coming across very badly, I know that, but I really do stand with you. And I feel like it's a lot of like just a boiling point of emotions, and I think that we do need to do stuff, and that's what needs to happen. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying racist voices matter. Racist voices are unacceptable on campus, and I am tired of people thinking that is something that's okay on campus. I totally agree with you, and that's not what I'm saying, though. Please don't put words in my mouth. I'm not saying that.
I think that it would be only respectful to the person who asked this question if we got back to the topic of the question. She asked a question and wanted answers, so I think that we should probably answer that.
Yeah, I can talk real quick as well. I absolutely do not agree with the statements that the former director was making, and I definitely do not agree with any of the points that you put in the chat.
I'll go next. So my name is Jake Jiggles, and I'm the Speaker of the Senate, so I have no vote on the legislation. I don't write it or anything. But I would like to say that systemic racism is definitely a real thing. I believe that it is a very pressing issue. It always has been, but has really come to the forefront right now. And hearing kids come and talk to student government, which is something that really hasn't happened in the 3 years that I've been here, as well as just the things, that we hear in class, has been very eye-opening. And I'd like to say that I disagree with the comments that former director made, and particularly about it being a Marxist ideology. I don't think it is. I think it is a very, important issue that really needs to be discussed. I would like to say that it's a political issue, and not in a partisan sense. It's an issue that is best solved through the political process, which is why it's very important and great that people are coming to SGA, because this moving forward to find solutions and to hold people accountable is best done through SGA, through local government, and through our federal government. And so it is a political issue, but not a divisive one. It is one that everyone really should, can, and hopefully will be on board with. And I would be glad to support anything moving forward. Thanks.
I'll chime in next, just kind of following the other seniors. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is really crappy. I'm in a landlord this year. Regarding the message that you sent, all those points, I definitely disagree, especially, well, I disagree with all those. I disagree with everything Tong Yu, our former director, has said. One thing I want to kind of reemphasize is just looking back at Dr. Spina's email and keeping things civil, and I think we have done a pretty good job of that. What was I going to say? I think it's like such a blessing, and we should all take a second to reflect on that. We are all here at the University of Dayton. Some of us are paying full ride. Some of us have, some of us are paying full tuition. Some of us have full ride. But I think it's really empowering that we are able to meet have these Sunday meetings where we can invite everyone in and we can hear all these different perspectives. And I know this semester has been hard on me, but I'm just really thankful to be in SJ and to have all these voices coming together and really working towards the betterment of the organization.
And to my knowledge, I think that is everybody.
Okay, would the next person in the chat, or sorry, in the doc like to go ahead?
Hello, everybody. My name is Cameron Nolan. I am a part of Alpha Psi Lambda, and I'm also a member of iLead. I'm not the next person to speak, but she let me speak before her because I actually have a prior engagement. So I'm gonna try to make this as fast as possible without cutting corners. So Miss Copolino, is that how you pronounce your last name? I'm very bad with names.
Yes, you're good. Whatever. I know what you mean.
So I know that you have spoken up against what the former director has said, and I know that you've actually spoken at the protest, and you said that you support the anti-racist movements and you support us. But the only problem, and I appreciate it, but the only problem that I have is while you're speaking for the whole entire organization, I don't know, nor do I really believe that's the truth, because I have not heard it from anybody else. I have heard them say that they disagree with the former director, but I've not heard them say that they agree with the anti-racism policies. So while I appreciate everybody for the most part disagreeing, I think it's important that I don't need to hear an I agree, but I think it's important that you know that that is important. And then for Mr., I'm just gonna call you Jacob by the first name. I understand that you feel that some people might feel attacked verbally, maybe even mentally. But I just wanna let you know and be aware that people of color, especially Black people, are being attacked sexually, physically, and mentally, and murdered. This is serious. So I don't know, I just have a little bit of a problem with that because we are dying in the streets. That's kind of how what it is. So when you say like, oh, we need to be sensitive of people's beliefs and whatever, I didn't hear anybody speaking up for Black people when racist people were saying the N-word in snow, when they gave a Black person a noose in their dorm room, I believe. I didn't hear that same I'm gonna call it energy, that same energy for them. So I have a little bit of a problem with that. So I just think it's important that you guys reflect on what I said. Because as a person of color myself, and as an immigrant, and as a human rights major, you guys have failed me, and I know you guys have failed this community. So I would just appreciate it if you guys could reflect on what I've said and what all these other wonderful people have said. Good night and have a wonderful meeting.
Thank you, Cameron. We definitely will reflect on all of that. Would the next person in the doc like to go ahead?
So I was actually after Mackenzie, but like Cameron already stated, he had somewhere to be, so I let him go ahead of me. To piggyback off of what he just said, yeah, there's a lot of like, you know, softness and like he said, that energy for people who don't even believe systemic racism is like a thing. So with that being said, I think that, you know, we need to redirect, are actually in need, people who are actually being attacked, because for you to lose a position or for you to not be held in a certain high regard that you were before, that's really not that's not an issue of sensitivity. That's the issue of holding accountability. It might feel uncomfortable, but that's what accountability looks like on certain levels. And shoot, I should have wrote this down. I'm sorry, my mind is like going blank right now. Oh, about racism just being like a talking point. It's not. I feel like it's really telling that Mackenzie laid out 4 specific questions and she got like 1 answer or 2 answers from everybody. It should have been very much 1, 2, 3, 4. No, 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 no. Don't understand what the pushback with that was. Don't understand why there were crickets. Don't understand why we couldn't just, as a consent. I don't agree with any of that. Any of those 4 that she laid out, I don't get why there was so much kickback. I don't get why they were so uncomfortable with things that were very yes or no questions, and they were very laid out. And she put them there multiple times and people were still like twiddling their thumbs, and just, that's very telling. For an organization that's all on the same page, that's very telling. Another thing. Okay, so again, with the energy being misplaced, we're giving sensitivity to people who don't even realize that systemic racism is real. In fact, I think that, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but being exposed to racism induces trauma. So I don't understand why he was able to, I don't know if he sent out that email like before he was booted from his position or after, but I don't understand, like kind of going off of what Maya said earlier, I don't get why he was able to still like email from his position. I don't understand. I mean, like you guys can't like disable his email, but I mean like just having that sent to me, that stuff induces trauma. I don't know if people who don't experience racism know that or not, but being exposed to racism induces trauma. So we get that to our mailbox and we're sitting here like, what is going on? Like, what is going on? So I wanted to read through something that I put together earlier. I don't know how much time is left. Y'all can cut me off if I go over my time. But one of his claims were that racial tensions have worsened due to critical race theory, and that critical race theory makes white people feel guilty for things they did not do. So here's my response to that. Critical race theory observes the current manifestations of race and racism in relation to power. Being that race itself is a social construct, not a scientific one, it makes the most sense to critique the consequences of race and racism through this lens. Race was established in the United States as a system. I'll say that again. Race was established in the United States as a system with the purpose of distinguishing poor and working whites from poor and working POC, which is evident through the Virginia slave codes enacted between 1640 and 1705. You can look that up on your own time. The term white was constructed to unite certain European groups living in the United States who were fighting each other. And at the same time, they were a numerical minority in comparison to African slaves and Native peoples. So again, racism is an ongoing system, and it is established for, a system is like a way of doing something. So it does need individuals to keep it going. Racism is not a one-off time when somebody uses a slur or when somebody says something that's wrong. Somebody said in the chat, I got sick to my stomach reading that email. Exactly. So stuff like that, I just don't know how that was allowed. I don't know, but whatever, I'll keep going. So, I mean, basically I'm done. Like, I just want to wrap it up and say, like, I'm deeply disturbed and annoyed at the fact that we're still on the point of which it's just like, oh, well, maybe we should consider everyone's feelings. His feelings shouldn't be placed above people who, it's just like, I don't even know how to say it, but his feelings should not be placed above any of these issues. They shouldn't even be in the same conversation, because what, like, how do those two things correlate? His feelings and him inducing trauma on Black and brown people. Like, why are we even having that conversation about his feelings? That's just what I want to say. So if people feel guilty when they hear about race and racism, and they feel guilty when they completely undermine a system that is actively killing Black and brown people, they should feel guilty. They should feel bad, and they should be held accountable. And being held accountable might feel uncomfortable. That's just the way it is. That's all I have.
Thank you so much for your comment. Just to clarify, he did not run that email by anyone in SGA. It wasn't an email sent like from an SGA account. It was his personal UD email. So unfortunately, we don't have like the ability to censor that. Also, everybody in the organization got that email at the same time that the email was sent to everybody else. So we didn't even know he was resigning from his position until it was put in that like email to everyone. So it wasn't like anything that we approved or anything like that. We didn't approve his words there. But thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it. Can the next person in the doc please speak now when they're ready?
Yes. So excuse me, I'm not really good at speaking, but that's just me. So this is basically in response to he who is no longer here, and also his peers who I know for a fact more than likely probably agree with him, but you know, they don't want the same I guess repercussions as he. So my first thing is, in his email, he brought up the idea of the critical race theory. Basically saying that the critical race theory is what sowed hatred into this country. One thing I just want to say is, a theory did not sow hatred in this country. Patriarchy and racism did. Critical race theory did not murder Emmett Till, Sandra Bland, Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Breonna Taylor, Oscar Grant, George Floyd, Michael Brown, India Kager, John Crawford, Eric Garner, Philando Castile, Martin Luther King, Huey P. Newton, and Fred Hampton. So that's what I just want to say at first. My next statement that I had an issue with is his statement, I hope we will not be using anti-racism as an excuse to oppress people who don't agree with ideological Marxist terms, such as systems of domination, hierarchy, and oppression. So my question is, since when is wanting equality and equity considered Marxist and communist? We the people have had to deal with 400 years of oppression, racism, murder, and enslavement. So when the hell did that become an issue? When the hell did that become Marxist, wanting equality and equity? Someone please explain this to me, because this is the same person that got onto this SGA position, okay? So you guys will be held accountable for this. I'm gonna continue. Especially after the premature end of Reconstruction, which removed and obstacled Black people and people of color from public offices, which I've noticed that a lot of you who use the argument, well, you guys didn't run. Well, guess what? That also comes from systematic racism. I'm gonna say that now. A lot of Black people were forced into sharecropping, and really, really crappy contracts would cause them to have to go through generations of economic disparities. That's also another thing. Lack of education. The US government defunded Black schools, and that is a known thing. They defunded Black neighborhoods, Black schools, and that's why a lot of our kids nowadays don't even know how to read, because of the US government, okay? Lynching and murder, still happening today, but don't nobody ever really want to talk about that, because they don't want to hear the ugliness of the America. Our society is ugly. They kill us every single day, but do you guys care? I don't think so. I don't see any of you marching out there with us. Let's just be real. Let's talk about, chain gangs in the prison pipeline. You guys know where that even stemmed from? After Reconstruction as well. Because after Reconstruction, the Confederates basically took over the South once again, and to remove people from public offices and also remove people from having those jobs that were deemed to be white jobs, they started sending them to prison, charging them for things that they shouldn't even be charged. But no one was talking about that, where that started from, why we are disproportionately incarcerated on a higher rate than our white peers. Don't nobody want to talk about that. Let's talk about the medical experiments that were done on people of color. About the Tuskegee experiments, does anybody even know what that is? They infected Black men and Black women with, syphilis? So that way they can understand how it works. I mean, what's up with that? Come on now. Let's also talk about when he wanted to compare the Chinese Cultural Revolution, the enemies of the people. People were being murdered, violated, and attacked because they had money and they were socioeconomically advanced. But guess what? We were being murdered, killed, raped, pillaged because of the color of our skin. So, I mean, I don't know what he thought he was doing with that, Oh, and then he also used pilgrims. You mean the same people who escaped religious freedom and speech just to oppress another group of people coming here? Because last time I checked, they brought millions of slaves to the Americas. Not only that, they killed in almost the entire indigenous population coming here. So please explain that to me, how that's supposed to just sway me all of a sudden. Also, my last thing I want to talk about is his use of the term radical. Basically, what he was trying to do is using that term to discredit the voices of people who are being oppressed. That's one of the biggest ways our US government has tried to oppress us, by using the term radical, basically saying that we do not do things by the book. But guess what? Every time we do things by the book, it always backfires in our face at the end of the day. It never fails. So that was just my response to him. I know he'll eventually see it. And I know a lot of you, this is also my response to you as well, so.
I think I would like to hear from some other council members as well.
This would be the time for the people to speak on their character, people who feel like their voices need to be heard, people who feel like, we're silencing voices. This is the silence. You can fill it with whatever you want to say.
I don't know. I guess the one thing I want to say that's the most important thing, is the former director is no longer a part of this organization. He does not stand with what this organization stands for, and he's no longer here. And so I guess the one thing I want to say too is I very much disagreed with how he handled this situation, but he's no longer here. And now we as an organization are trying to move forward. And I appreciate everybody's comments today, and I know others do as well. But right now we are here to move forward and try to become a better anti-racist organization. So I just wanted to say thank you for being here.
I just want to reply back to Andrew. I understand that you guys want to move forward, but at the same time, it is your job to be held accountable by students for the things that you guys were compliant and complacent with, okay? You guys were not about to hold this man accountable for the things that he said and did. You guys were gonna pull strings so that way this man was still able to have a position on SGA to represent students. So even though you want to move forward and move past this, I totally understand. That still does not excuse you from being held accountable tonight.
I mean, I would like to add something. I mean, while we're on the topic of systemic racism, it's a very good point brought up in the chat that the former director was in SGA for 3 years and got elected into SGA for 3 years straight. So to say, yes, he resigned, but what would have happened if he didn't? Would he have been impeached? Would he have been removed? Because honestly, I think what it's looking like to the student body is no, he would have kept his position. I can't speak on that because I'm not part of the JRB or the J or any of the other things that would have evaluated his case or anything. So I can't speak on their process, and I know everything is super private, but it is looking like he would have stayed in SGA if he had not resigned himself. And that is the exact point of systemic racism, that the system is allowing somebody like the former director with such disgusting views to stay in a position that obviously would have greatly affected an enormous amount of minority students. So yes, he resigned, and yes, he's gone, but it's bigger than him. It's bigger than the person. It's bigger than it's bigger than just one hate crime or one murder or one police brutality. It's a whole system. It all correlates with each other. And that's exactly what I meant earlier when I was saying that the Student Government Association benefits off of white supremacy and the racist institution that UD used to be and still is. So I think Malia brought up great points. And I mean, somebody asked, how many people came to the anti-racism demonstration that we had a couple weeks ago? Because I know people had class. Don't come for me. I know people had class. But not everybody had class. I could probably count on my fingers that people that I saw. That's just one step, and people have been SGA for years. This is the first time any of this stuff is being brought to the attention. So it's important to keep having this conversation. It's important to keep acknowledging that this is systemic. Our racism in our organization is systemic. We are not an anti-racism organization. SGA is a very racist organization. We are here to fix that. And Drew, that's not to undermine you or anything. I don't mean to do that in any way, but I just think it was important to emphasize that.
No, I agree with you. No, thank you for bringing that up. Seriously, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean in any way that just because he's not here anymore, the issue's not here. I was just saying that all of his views don't back up what SGA's views are. I guess that is what I meant to say by him no longer being here.
I'm going to chime in real quick if that's all right. I know in the past, I'm not trying to make any excuses or anything. He hadn't had this position, and I think over the summer, I don't know what made him get these viewpoints. He might have had these viewpoints in the past. I just haven't worked close enough to fully know his viewpoints in the past. But someone just commented, what actions are you doing personally to better yourself and better your education on this? Obviously listening I just ordered that book on Amazon, the one that someone mentioned above. But if you guys have the time, if I know personally, I'm going to go through the bylaws and constitution later and really reread and really think about each line there and figure out how we can make SGA better. But if anyone has any advice on how we can change some wordings, how we can implement policies to make SGA better, get rid of those racist lines, anything that outs anyone, that makes it harder or more systematic to oppress people. If we can do anything in those policies, please reach out to me, reach out to anyone in SGA that you feel comfortable reaching out to. I know personally I'm going to go through and look at our bylaws and constitution after this. Thank you.
To clarify, if you want to, that is not like anybody's job to do. That is our mess to clean up. That is our mess. But we welcome any opinions or anything like that.
Going off of what's been said, yeah, definitely we are in positions where we need to be held accountable, and we need to take these steps to fix some issues that have recently arisen that have been in SGA. And it is absolutely, terrible that this is how we had to come across, these issues that students were hurt and, had to go through, as was addressed, like the trauma of reading that email and that things turned out the way that they did. But I think it really highlights that, as Drew said, action was, taken. Like, he is no longer a part of SGA, but we have so much work to do to fix this organization, and first this organization and then extend that onto campus. And so what has kind of gone on the past few weeks is so important. Hearing these concerns from students is so important, because we do need to be held accountable, and we need these issues to be raised for us to kind of move forward. So yeah, as Senator Reese was bringing up, I'm definitely going to read through the bylaws, look at that, and yeah.
Okay.
I have a little comment or a question, actually. Okay, I'll just go. First, before I start, my comment was, thank you, Natalie, for coming to the anti-racist demonstration and speaking. I appreciate that. And thank you to all of the senators and people a part of SGA who were in attendance. Those who weren't, I noticed, but anyways, I digress. So for the new position for Campus Unity, are they allowed to appoint their people who are under them or their organization or little group? And if so, how does that process go? Because I think there needs to be a checks and balance with that, so that they're not being biased and asking for resumes and saying who and who cannot participate if it's a volunteer position.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your initial question clearly. My audio was not working. Could you please repeat that?
So for whoever is appointed this new Campus Unity position or whatever position is about to be created, is there a system for checks and balances for when they do create the group, or whoever can join that specific Campus Unity? Is there a way that they're not the only ones appointing members or candidates for that?
Yeah, so what will happen is after this person is appointed, it'll be the Campus Unity Committee that's staying, just to clarify. I know that there was talk about it being split, going away, whatever, but it's staying. So when a person is appointed to that position, they do have meetings that will be scheduled with people within the organization to make sure that everyone's staying on track with what they're supposed to be doing.
But are they the only ones that are able to actual members under them?
So it is in our bylaws that the directors and the committee co-chairs do appoint people to sit on their committee.
So if there's only one director or chair for that committee, and essentially how it happened before, he or she can appoint and be biased and say, well, you need a resume for this, or you need to do that, or I don't think that you fulfill this position or this requirement. I think there needs to be a checks and balance where there's multiple people who are able to appoint.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we can be looking into. Like I said earlier, we will be going through and have already started going through the bylaws and constitution with a fine-tooth comb. So that suggestion is just one more thing that we can look to implement. Thank you for that. Would the next person in the doc like to go ahead and unmute themselves?
So first off, I'm a freshman and I'm new to the community. I'm new to everything that's going on. And it's very much alarming to walk into an institution and find out that there's all this going on. And it's very much alarming that this man has been in SGA for 3 years now. And I'm pretty sure this has not been the first instance of something like that. I'm pretty sure it's been minor microaggressions that should have been called out on before. I don't know why. It just makes me mad that I come in and I have to find out that we, the students that have appointed you guys to this position, and we have to call people in your guys' organization out. I feel like you guys are a group, and anything that one of y'all does stands for all y'all. And it just I don't understand why we had to call him out and we had to bring the one to put him on the stand. I feel like that's your guys' job. You guys are in the position of a group, and he is the director of campus unity. It's just very much alarming. And this is mostly for the seniors in the group. How are you guys going to leave this year? What impact are you guys going to have? What changes are you guys going to make for me in the future, first years in the future, just people coming in? How are you guys going to make this place more open for me and anyone, pretty much?
I'm a senior senator. Oh, go ahead, Natalie, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kelly, it's all you.
I just want to say that, yeah, I'm a senior senator. Just to respond to your point, like I said before, I've been in SGA for 4 years, and this is probably kind of the most transformative time that I've seen. And I'm excited just to be a part of it. Even if I don't have a clear cut, cookie cutter answer for you, I'm just excited to be a part of this and to see what's to come and to see what we can all come up with together and kind of pave the way forward for this to be different in the future and for you to have a different experience, tomorrow and every day following after that. I think this is a good starting point. And like I said before, I'm just really happy to be involved in something that seems to be so powerful.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, to go off of that a little bit, I'm a senior. Most of you probably know that. So is Annie and a lot of other people here. But my biggest thing and the biggest impact that I want to leave behind is changing those bylaws and constitution and making them more equitable and inclusive for people to be a part of this organization. We want people in this organization that have different, that come from different backgrounds and all of that. If there's a voice missing from the table, then the table's not complete. At that, would the next person in the chat, or sorry, not chat, in the doc, like to go ahead?
I'm sorry. I don't think my question was really answered. I was pretty much asking, how are you guys going to hold each other accountable? It wasn't really yeah, I'm sorry. I just don't feel like that was answered. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. So I think that the best way for us to hold each other accountable, somebody said it a little bit earlier as a suggestion, but to have more clear-cut roles in the bylaws that people need to follow and that they can be, removed from the organization for, or, some type of disciplinary action can be taken against them if they do not, if they cannot act in their position appropriately. So that's just kind of what I meant by like one aspect of changing the bylaws in the governing documents. Did that kind of?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I also didn't realize you were kind of talking to the point of accountability. I actually sit on the JRB, so like a couple people have mentioned before, it is confidential, but I don't even know if I'm allowed to say the duration of the meeting. I will just say it was very, very, very extensive, and it went on for a very long time. We took it really seriously, and there was extreme accountability going on throughout the whole process. So like I said, I'm out of the 4 seniors, I'm the one that sits on that board, and I can assure you that accountability was very, very high for that entire evening.
Yeah, to add on to the accountability that the JRB held the director to, there were charges brought forth against the director, and well, now none of them, so one of them was legislation that would have been passed, and now that will not be seen because you can't really pass legislation against somebody that's not in the organization. And the other one was that he had to hold events with his committee, and he's no longer the director, so he's not going to be holding any events with the committee. So
I have a question about that. You say that we can't pass legislation on someone that's not in our community or in SGA. And I'm confused because this person spread pretty toxic ideas in the organization. And just because they're gone does not mean that we should not be allowed to pass legislation that can effectively take action in separating us.
Senator Cars-Chelman, I do respect what you're saying. Feel free to write any legislation you feel, but this particular piece of legislation can't be brought forth due to bylaws restrictions and precedent. So you can write any legislation you feel like, though.
And are we able to know why or what specifically in the bylaws are preventing us from doing that? And then
Confidentiality.
Or is that confidential? Yeah. Okay.
All right. Would the next person in the doc like to go ahead and unmute themselves and speak?
I'm pretty sure that's me. Hi, my name is Paige Gibo, and I'm a sophomore, and I had the privilege of filling an appointment last year for freshman senator, so I was able to serve as a freshman senator for the majority of the second semester. And doing that, I got to work hand in hand with a lot of you guys, and I know you guys, and I respect you, and I know that you're good people. However, because I was able to serve last year, I was in the Senate where we had to have such a long and difficult discussion about whether we wanted to have our individual votes counted so people knew how each senator voted. And it was such a hard fight to have that done, and it didn't even result in how many senators wanted. And that just makes me think if we had such an accountability issue last year that was dealt with. However, we're still seeing that again this year. And I want to reiterate what was said by the speaker before me of it shouldn't be an issue of students coming to SGA senators and being like, you haven't spoken about your beliefs on this incredibly important and relevant issue. They had to grab it out of the senators. And I think that from a student perspective of somebody who's not currently in SGA right now, that is a very, very bad look that's building distrust between SGA and the students. Because at the end of the day, we elected you guys, and SGA members are elected. And so it's very poignant and understandable for people to want to know your personal beliefs on situations where this does directly affect them. And because those who are elected also appoint many of the people who currently serve who are not elected positions, it's incredibly crucial to hold this accountability. And so although I, again, really appreciate and value a lot of the people who I've worked with last year in this organization, I have a little bit of a hesitancy to accept the accountability promises that are being made when we see that there was not really a fix of the accountability issue that we're facing last year. And so I guess my question is, do we have somewhat of a timeline or a time reference that we as students, the people who elected SGA, can hold you guys accountable so it's not more of, we're going to do this, but we never really see a timeline or facts that hold that accountable? Do you guys have a time frame or timeline that we can expect?
Yeah, Paige, thank you for your comment and for bringing this up. So the small group of us that met on Friday morning, actually, we met to kind of solidify some action steps that SGA wants to take in order to become an anti-racist organization. And this was kind of prompted by some legislation that we passed a couple of weeks ago. And along with the timeline of that, our goal is to have more legislation, kind of like more of an from an accountability standpoint, outlining the steps that we will be taking with some type of a timeline to coincide with that, to be presented at our upcoming Senate this next week. So that's like the next deadline for that. And then we'll be meeting this week to write that legislation and kind of figure out deadlines and timelines and all that stuff.
Thank you. And then really quickly, just to add on a point that was made earlier, yes, the previous member of SGA, yes, he had been elected by the students, but there was a form of interpersonal accountability that, again, I think is preached to the student general public, but in private behind closed doors, before we had recorded meetings, before all that, it wasn't necessarily the case. And I'm seeing that still from, again, a student perspective, still seeing that carry through, because there was no personal objections or senator objections or appointee objections by this very obviously wrong and hurtful statement. And it just doesn't really understand or correlate that you guys are saying that you hold each other accountable within the organization, but that's not, from my student perspective, I think from law student perspectives, that's not being effectively displayed. And so I guess at this point, the only thing that can happen is, after continuing to address the situation, we can only move on in the sense of taking what has occurred today and stepping it up. But I just want to say to all the senators, this is on you to make your not citizens, but the people who elected you, the people in your grade, it is your personal job to make them fully aware of how you feel and that you support their stances. And so I guess I'm just asking that from now on, it doesn't have to be such of a struggle to try and get these very important opinions out of senators, because I don't think that if Jada had done all of what she had done and had fought this hard, and members of MEC and BATU had done this, I don't think senators would have been acting accountably or professionally for the position that they have been elected to hold. That's all I have to say. Thank you for letting me speak. And thank you for everybody, people of color, non-people of color, who have tried to contribute and help move this along. This is a very, very important dialogue to have.
All right, thanks, Paige. I think that was the end of our public comments and concerns sign-up sheet. Does anybody else have anything to add? Just go ahead and unmute yourself.
Real quick, there's that comment about the how we keep saying everything is confidential. Chris, could you just explain that a little bit and why we can't give all the details? I know we're in a tricky spot. It makes us look pretty bad, like we're hiding stuff. I've been trying to be as transparent as possible, but could you just explain a little bit, like, why we can't publish all the details?
I think that Jada and others have said that we've got a system, and it doesn't mean that the system works, but right now we have to abide by the system, to partly for legal reasons. And so I recognize also that many SGA members have said that they are committed to reviewing that system and looking at that system and looking for ways in which that system upholds systemic racism and holds back our community from moving forward. I really appreciated Jules' comment about legislation, and I think that what might not have been clear, and again, whether we agree with it or not, the system says that we cannot put a consequence forward for someone who's no longer in the organization. To Jules's point, that doesn't mean that the organization cannot distance itself from comments made by a former member or anyone else in the campus community that are problematic and hurtful and oppressive to communities on our campus. And so I very much hear that the confidential word is getting extreme, and I recognize that. And so we will certainly not only talk within SGA, but also look to other schools and look for advice on how to run more transparent processes, particularly as students have called for it, and Natalie's administration has said transparency is critical. And so this issue is not over, and I wish that there was more that we could say, but unfortunately, we do have to follow our system, or we could open ourselves up to legal concerns.
Right. And I hope I'm not interrupting or, ending your statement too early there, Chris, but I think for me, I just want to respond also to the comment here that was just made. I'm interested, so I feel like a resolution that's written on systemic racism is going to take a lot more time and thought. I'm more interested in making a resolution that explicitly separates SGA from what was said, right? So we are not saying what is right, we're just saying what we know is wrong. I mean, because saying what we know is right takes a lot more time and a lot more thought to do it right. But obviously, from tonight's statements, everyone feels like they know what is wrong. So I think that I should not be the person that is spearheading a resolution on systemic racism. I think I'm happy to be part of it, but that is going to require a lot of people and a lot of input. And Chris, as far as what you're saying, talking about legality on our resolutions and what we're allowed to say and what we're not, I think I want to, as a senator, I want to learn what it is exactly that we can't do according to law, right, as a university in America, right, and then what we can do. And like, what are we really limited to? Because, our bylaws and our constitution might reflect that, but they also reflect a lot of other things. And I want to find that line. And I'm not sure how, but I would like to learn how.
And I will meet with anyone who wants to meet and discuss that further. Legally, what we have to do is follow what's in our bylaws and our constitution. And if we want to do something different, we have to change those documents. And so I hear calls to do that. I hear commitments to do that. And I look forward to being a part of that process.
All right. Understood. Thank you.
All right, since we were at the end of the doc, did anybody else want to voice a public comment or concern before we move on?
I put a statement in the chat and I don't know if everyone saw it. And so I want to personally express thanks to all of our Black, Indigenous, and other people of color in the audience for continuing to come and share your experiences with your peers. And recognizing an earlier comment about the ongoing trauma of reliving and rehashing and sharing these experiences. I see you. I see that this is difficult, painful, and traumatic. And I hope that your commitment to sharing your voices leads to positive change, and anything I can do to be a part of that, I will do.
And I just want to say from my position in Senate, everybody from the MET community, I see you, I love you, I hear you. Thank you guys so much for taking the time, because I know we've been here for going on 2.5 hours plus. And I know you guys could be doing a lot more things and not fighting for equality amongst the peers in SGA. So I really do appreciate everybody who took the time and came here and shared your opinion and shared your experiences. You guys are the reason I'm in my position. You guys are the reason I'm still here at UD. And I love you guys so very much. So thank you guys for continuing to fight and support, even though you don't have to. So I love you guys. I see you, I hear you, and I'm doing everything in my power to fight for you guys.
Echoing both what Chris and what Jada said, thank you all so much for continuing to tirelessly come to Senate, hold people accountable and all of that. I really do appreciate it from a personal standpoint. And I look forward to really moving forward from this and making SGA truly an anti-racist organization.
Jada, thank you very much for your comments. I just want to echo them 100%. I agree. And I'm very new, but I want to be here to actually represent people. And if anyone has any ideas, always feel free to let me know. And I would love to be a part of helping the community in any way that I can through legislation and through other ways. But I'm here mainly to listen first and then help in any way that I can, and that you need me to if you need me to help.
I'll make this quick because Jada did like recognize that we've been talking for 2.5 hours. But to a lot of the MEC students, I just want to remind you that these problems aren't new this year. But the thing that's new is we have a president who's standing behind us and standing with us. And I know that I've said this before, that she's the first person that I've seen to actively make a stand against racism. And she doesn't just do that in the form of SGA, but she's come and stood with us at the rally, at the march, and in the lounge. So just to like remind you that as I leave like in the spring semester, to keep up the good fight, because this is a fight worthwhile. And I just really look forward to seeing that fire continue within all of you, because it's for causes like this that I'm in the position I have at MEC, and the reason why I still keep going. So thank you to SGA and to all of the MEC representatives here.
Thank you, Lena. I appreciate it. All right, last call for public comments and concerns. If anybody has anything, just feel free to unmute yourself.
Hello, yes, I have a question. I know you said that you guys were gonna pass like a piece of legislation, but because he's not in the position anymore, you can't pass it. But are there any like plans in the work to pass something to prevent an incident like that from happening again? Or yeah, I just want to, and I know we kind of talked about it earlier a little bit, but I just want to know, is there like a plan currently in the place to like, not like replace that legislation, but like I don't know how else to phrase it, but to like prevent something like that from happening?
So the entire situation stemmed from someone sending an email, unless we're going to field every single SJ email through Chris and Amy, which I'm sure they would not want to read 100 emails a day. I don't think that in particular could be prevented, other than just, having different people in SGA. But as I said earlier, with the help of Jules, Jada, and everybody else here, we can write a resolution on that would sort of replace the thing that will no longer be brought to floor.
So Mason, what started us here was a statement to the Academic Senate on behalf of a student government committee. And so in conversation with Natalie and a national consultant who works with SGAs across the country, it was recognized that there is a flaw in the process of speaking on behalf of the organization, and that, as Natalie has said, she was not aware, Amy and I were not aware that this statement was going to be made. And so part of the bylaws revision is going to be looking at what process exists when someone wants to speak on behalf of the organization. And also to your point, Mason, Amy and I are happy to look over any emails that any of our members would like to send out, and we frequently do. So please know that we are here to help you. For me, looking at something and looking over different ways that different phrases and terms and sentiments might be received is something that I really thrive on. So please send it to us. We are happy to give you perspectives. And you can run your emails by other people in your networks. That's why we say it's really important that you have strong and diverse networks to be able to think about what you're communicating.
I'm just going to say one quick thing, hopefully wrapping things up here, but I just want everyone that comes here every night. I know it's been a long 2.5, 3 hours for a lot of people, but your views are important. And as these Senate meetings go on, like we were talking about passing these resolutions to make SGA stand away from claims that have been made in the past, we want every week something to be held accountable about SGA, whether that's passing a resolution, whether that's us making a statement about being anti-racism. We want every week for you guys to feel that we are listening to you and making that action. So you guys coming, you guys reaching out to us during the week. It doesn't just have to be at Senate. We want to hear your guys' thoughts. So throughout this week and next time when you guys come to Senate, we can say, we heard you. This is what we did this week to work on the actions to help you guys. And then we can move on to the next week. And hopefully we can get to the point where one day in Senate, we can just have the civil conversation. And if you guys want to bring anything up, you can, but we want to take all those actions that we can to show you guys we are an anti-racist organization. We do not agree with any of the statements that have been made. All of us as a whole are working for you guys. We stand with you guys. So I just want that to be put out there. If you reach out to any of us, we will work throughout the week to help you guys.
Yes, I would just like to say thank you, Natalie, for, you know, being with us like through this whole time and being supportive and, you know, just being there when it counts. Like, I really do appreciate that. And I just want to let you know that I appreciate you.
Thank you, Malia. It means a lot.
Well, Natalie just told me that she's not feeling well at the moment, so I'm going to go ahead and start with Senate floor. So actually, before that, I think if there's any committee reports or if any SGA members would like to give a report at this time, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, I'll just give a quick one real quick. So I'm in a meeting tomorrow with some faculty and administration talking about a few planning items for next semester. And one of the things we're planning on discussing is Proctor Track, which is the proctoring service that's being used this year for online tests and things, and whether it should be in place for next semester. And so personally, I don't have any experience using this if it's going well for students. And so I'd really like your feedback tonight or very early tomorrow about it. If it's going well or if it should be implemented next semester. If you could just send me an email or a Slack message or just chat me in this Zoom about Proctor Track and just your feelings about it, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, are we in proper Robert's rules right now? Or
No, this is just reports. You can go ahead and respond to Brill or give your own.
All right, Mr. Brill, I just, do you have any specifics on this proctoring program and what it might entail for those of us next semester? Because I can't say if I'm for or against or give any feedback if I don't know what exactly that is going to mean.
Yeah, so it's actually currently in place this semester. It's pretty much just an online service. So if you have to take a test or something, it's a service that helps prevent cheating. I'm not exactly sure what it entails. I believe it's just pretty much your video is on and maybe your audio is on while you would be taking a test. And so it's meant to prevent cheating. I haven't gotten any firsthand experience with the program itself, but I hope some of you on this call have and could share your experiences with it. That would be great.
I haven't gotten any experience with it, but I've had friends who have, who either go to different schools or go here. I have a lot of test anxiety. So like usually when I take tests, I fidget around a lot. I usually look around the room. And I think one really big thing with like the proctor, you know, it does prevent cheating, which I think is super important, but it also penalizes students for like looking around, fidgeting, you know, that kind of thing. So I think that's, you know, while it does prevent academic dishonesty, I think that's also important to consider, like, you know, some students like just can't just physically stand still and like take a test, like, are looking around the room, you know, like the thing where it has you like walk around your room and it like tracks noise. I mean, I know ever since I've gotten in Zoom, when I'm on class or sometimes even when I'm writing papers or doing assignments, I always have people who like maybe one of my roommates comes into my house or like somebody calls my name. And you know, it doesn't mean that like I'm cheating while I'm taking a test, but there can be a lot of distractions that proctor things like that, like take into account, and then they can punish you and say that you're cheating. So I just think that's something that would definitely need to be looked into. You know, if like students are looking around, like is that going to be a penalization? You know, if somebody comes into my room while I'm taking a test, like is that considered cheating? You know, I think just more clarification on like what are the, you know, if that makes any sense. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. I'll definitely bring it up tomorrow. I'm not exactly sure how like strict the system that we have and like how it tracks that. I have heard like stories of people like sneezing and getting cut off, but I don't know if that's happening with this proctor service.
Yeah, like my friend goes to OSU and they don't use like they use a proctor called Canva, and like I've heard like really nightmare cases of like, you know, somebody walking to your room and then it shuts down your exam because it thinks you're cheating. And I don't know. And especially like people who are taking stuff at home. If I had to take a test at home and I got penalized for every time somebody like walked into my room or somebody called me or like a noise in the background, I wouldn't even be able to finish a test. Not everybody has like a stable environment to take tests like that in outside of being on campus. So just something to consider.
Thank you. And I definitely understand the anxiety of having that on while you're taking the test. And so thank you for that comment.
Real, I'd love to echo Jada's comments there.
I'm just kind of adding on to Jada's comments. I know I have a friend at Xavier, and I don't know what system they use, but I don't think it's the same one that we use. But I know they said they had to pay like $12 each time they had to take a test because they're using this third party who like monitors it. So I don't know if you have any ideas of would they charge the students or is that built in?
Yeah, I can answer that question directly. Yeah, so the charge is not incurred on the students at all. So students don't have to pay for proctoring at all. This is covered by the university completely. So that is thankfully not something we have to worry about.
All right, thank you.
James, there's a lot of information on the internet about equity concerns around software like this. So if you have not read any of that, you might look at some of that. Some of it's what Jada had mentioned, and some of it is just students' inability to be in a safe, quiet location during exams. And then I don't know if you brought this question up or not, but also asking about access and ability to use the software on personal networks when students go home after Thanksgiving, because we know how reliable UD's network is, but home networks are also a concern for many people.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to bring up tomorrow. And I'll definitely do more research tonight looking at it and trying to figure it out.
Going off Chris there, it's very important, the equity concerns, because not everyone has home Wi-Fi. So if they're doing it in a public place, a library or something, that would really mess up scores. So.
Okay, so kind of to go off of Jada's point, something to consider, I had to use like a Proctor lockdown browser for an accounting block. And I think people are like forgetting, but a lot of the kids that are have like accommodations for learning disabilities, they have like a cap of the amount of students that can actually go take a test in person and use their accommodations to be in a quiet, like distraction reduced environment. So I think it's really hard for students that have disabilities and they aren't actually able to be in a distraction reduced environment, but also being tracked by a lockdown browser. I know that made me really anxious that I couldn't have anywhere to go take my test. So.
Do we have any more senatorial reports? I know Mike Fields, you've got something to say?
Yes, so there was supposed to be a special request presentation today from Flying Solos. Unfortunately, they had a prior engagement that they had to attend to, so they left during the guest speaker. So we're just going to postpone that until next week because they did make an attempt to present, but just had some conflicts there. So hopefully next week they will present, and that also pertains to the legislation for tonight. So we won't be voting on that as well.
Anyone else? Well, if there's nothing else, we will not be, or I think I saw a hand there. Anyone? No? There will not be a Senate floor tonight as we have no legislation. It's not necessary. So if anyone else has anything to say, now's the time. If not, thank you all for coming.
Sorry, I actually do. Real quickly, so I touched on this 2 weeks ago. Jessica Garvin and I are working with Campus Rec to increase participation on intramural sports, especially with sophomores because the levels are especially low there. So we were talking with an associate director, and we were seeing that this is also not just a health issue, but more of a mental health issue as well. So if anybody in the mental health committee would like to reach out to us, or we'll definitely be reaching out to you this week about some ideas you might have about how we can increase this participation, we would love to hear from you or anybody else. We've reached out to some people, and what we've heard is that things such as soccer and flag football would really help to increase participation. Those are some of the biggest interests. But we're also looking for different types of intramurals that for next semester that might be of interest to people that we could bring up in this meeting. So we are meeting not tomorrow, but next Monday with that same associate director. So if anybody has any ideas, we'd love to hear from you, especially now as we work towards next semester, getting that done early so we can make sure that we have those intramurals ready for students well before starting next semester. And like I mentioned, Jess Garvin and I will be working on that, so you can reach out to either one of us, or if you'd like to be in that meeting, just reach out to either one of us and we'll get you in that meeting. Thank you.
Not seeing any more. You guys are all free to go. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.